Welcome to Get Your Bell Rung. I am KG, and with me tonight, I am so excited to have the guest that I have tonight, Rough Cut Ricky Ruby. This is a man who is a two-time CSWA heavyweight champion, two-time Missouri State Tag Team champion, the hardcore champion, tag team champion for RCW. I can keep going on more and more and more. You definitely have a excellent resume of achievements that you have accomplished.
Yeah, man, KG. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on here tonight. Like I said, that's pretty much toward the beginning of my career with CSWA, and of course, had so many promotions throughout that. Since then, of course, I'm sure we'll probably get into some of
Yes.
that, but yeah, I just I'm just lucky to have the career that I've had, and to have a way to join it, and actually still enjoying many aspects of it right now. So. Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on my podcast. I know you're a busy man. You have your own podcast, Files Count Anywhere, which is a great podcast, guys. If you guys want to check out a really great wrestling podcast, check them out. Again, that is Files Count Anywhere. Before we get into your wrestling career, though, I like to get to know the person because I'm a firm believer that wrestling doesn't make the person makes the wrestling, if that makes sense.
Of
Um,
course.
were you were you a wrestling fan as a kid?
Yeah, so how that came about is yeah, I mean, I started very young, and I just happened to be channel surfing when I was like about 8 years old. To just going through the tube, and we just got in cable, and this was just after the syndication that if anybody knows St. Louis wrestling, how McMahon just bought wrestling that to chase, and he's just hitting so many markets, and so he's just pumping, the WWF through the St. Louis market. And my first experience of a match of just people going wild is seeing Hogan defeat the Sheik at the Garden back in January of '84, and I was pretty much synced in from there. And I've pretty much been, and of course, other watched other guys along there since. But yeah, that's about how I came across it. I mean, it wasn't my parents' choice for me to watch something of a sporting activity. Maybe not, but it's something that just blew, and just something that identified with me, and something that I can relate to as far as how I could, myself as a person, going through battles myself. Everybody battles inside the ring. They battle
Right.
outside the ring, and it's just how you approach your battles.
Yeah. Well, what I find interesting about your childhood idols is you were a huge Hulk Hogan fan, a Dusty Rose fan, a Randy Savage fan, Ric Flair and Sting. And what I find interesting about that is, like myself, growing up down south, I grew up watching Mid South and Atlanta Championship Wrestling. So I wasn't much of a Hulk Hogan fan. I was a huge Ric Flair fan. But you were both. Were you able to watch all these different markets, the WWE and your other markets where you had your Stings and your Ric Flairs, the WCW, if you will?
Yeah, and I found a way to at least, we only had one TV that got the cable box, and I'm really aging myself here. Where the cable box where you slid the channels up and down on the
Yep.
box. Um, so we only had one TV for that, but I had to kind of pick and choose when to watch mine. I mean, I wasn't watching everything, but I watched what I could through the cable syndication. Of course, Saturday nights were mainly towards World Championship Wrestling, with coming out of the with Crockett on TBS. So I got hooked in with that. And the funny thing about that is, uh, because I was following WWF at the time, and then they
Mhm.
were promoting TBS at that time because that's where they took over for that year. And then after WrestleMania, I'm seeing all these guys in here that I'd never seen before, and I'm like, did he just like go through like a different roster? Is this because I'm young? I didn't really know what the hell was going on, but these guys still glued to me with the Andersons and Flair and Magnum TA and the Russians and all that. So, and I'm like, man, so I got like, there's like more. And then of course, also we got, yeah, I was watching syndication as well with World Class. They were syndicating big out of Texas, and so I was getting a lot. I was getting a lot of wrestling to view, and we eventually get into additional TVs, with the rabbit ears, because the TVs that had the rabbit ears, I was taking advantage of, and everybody else was, were watching their shows on the big TV. So that's how it kind of. So I did find a way to get my way and my fix to watching the shows that I wanted to.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, because, and I use myself for example. When I was first introduced to WWF by my older brother was when we first got cable. Man, it was hard for me to watch WWF because it was very cartoonish versus the Southern style wrestling where it was kind of reality based, right? And again, and I always have to say this because I don't want to upset fans of WWF at the time. I'm sure that their fans and their market love that product. I wasn't exposed to that market until I was already used to a certain type of wrestling. So when you went from watching WWF to Jim Crockett, was it hard for you to kind of adjust to the different styles that was happening?
No, and that was the beautiful part about it is I knew what styles they were because it seemed to me that Crockett and the NWA in the Carolinas and all that territory, the crowds, and of course with World Class, the crowd seemed to pop a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
They got more, and these guys were more wrestlers. I mean, there's very little gimmicks involved with all of that. And of course, like I said, you make a point. When you go back up in New York and you see a lot of the guys that are gimmicked and all that, and especially started getting into heavy gimmicks, starting in the late '80s, I would think. I mean, there were still some, that come throughout the earlier part of the '80s, but still, WWF did become more gimmick heavy than when you went to the Carolinas and when we went to Crockett's, and there were more old school. They were more like, let's just square up and fight, let's just, I mean, like the best promos that, were cut from the podium of that, or like any type of like backdrop that they have for like Worldwide Wrestling, or, any other program that NWA had, because these guys really poured it in. And that was the time where these guys really got creative and they knew what they had. They didn't have no scripts. They knew what they say. They had an idea in their head and they flew by the seat of their pants when they got in front of the camera. They didn't have a script. They found bullet points and they just shoot from the hip. And that was the, even today, those are the best promos that you can cut.
I agree. So how old were you when you knew that, man, I want to do this? I don't want to just be a fan. I want to get inside the ring. I want to be a professional wrestler.
Oh, well, that was still at a very early age. And I would still say it was somewhere in my middle school years. I knew I said, I know I have to do this. I know I can do this. Because, I've, growing up at school with me, because I always boasted how much I love wrestling, and then wrestling just got so razzed on back in those days. And the kids would just poke at me, and then they want to pick fights, and it's like I don't want to pick fights, but then if I have to kick your ass, I will, and I have to get a referral, and then my parents are finding out about it, and then they're not happy. I'm like, well, it's like I'm not going to sit here and be a punching bag. So, and then of course, I built a couple of variations of a reputation that I won't take any slack. And then it's like, well, he's kind of weird, but whatever the case may be. And then when I knew I was getting serious about it, of course, I was playing football. I was still in baseball, softball. I mean, I was still athletically inclined, and I was still keeping myself in the gym. So I knew that it was a very tough sport, because I know how these guys worked in the ring. I know how, I saw the sweat coming down. These guys are just going at it. And like I said, even with Flair, I mean, back in the day when Flair could go legitimately 60 minutes on several nights of the week. And the guy's still partying it up and going the next night working sick. I'm like, this guy's a freaking machine. I'm like, I gotta get like a Ric Flair shit,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it started early, and I've actually to get myself ready to go into the business, I was actually training on basics by myself.
Mm.
And what I did was, my mother at the time was working for a foam company, and she brought home like some polyurethane, like styrofoam, probably about an inch and a half or 2 inches thick. And I made out like I taped down like a 12 by 12 area, laid it out in my yard, and I was back bumping on this 2 inches of foam on grass on the ground. I wasn't doing no trampolines or anything else. I mean, people would fool around with trampolines. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, when these guys are hitting hard, I got to hit hard. So so that's how I was training myself. And of course, I did have some childhood friends who wanted to test, kind of, friendly competition. Of course, it got overheated at times, but it eventually passed through. But we're sitting here wrestling and just knocked out, drag it out wrestling. Of course, we're not throwing fists or anything else of that nature because it's wrestling. It's not a fist fight, because if it was a fist fight back when I was doing my little thing back with my friends, then we're getting into some other trouble.
Right.
But I mean, that's how I prepared myself to kind of, that I did really want to get in and do the profession.
What school did you go to? Who trained you?
So, yeah, I did not state this to you, but I mean, it was here local. A few guys local around the St. Louis area. One of my main trainers that really got me, that showed me the ropes the most, was Frankie D. You might have saw him up at the Fan Fest, but he was on duty in a police uniform. But he was actually floating around there on that day of the Fan Fest. And then another gentleman by the name of Johnny Jett, who did a lot of work with Harley whenever WLW was coming up. And then also the drill instructor, who's also known by a different name from Mongolia. That's also in SICW right now. And those are the three guys that mainly put in the work. They came up because there's a group of us that wanted to come in. And the promoter at the time was Frank Reed that came in. Frank was one of the guys that really gave just about anybody an opportunity who was serious to get into the business. That he'll find a way to get veterans in there to train you, the guys that he trusted. But of course, the payment, he didn't take any of your money for payment. He made sure that you helped with the ring tear up and set up and tear down. Provide security, and of course, also as you're getting your foot in the door in the matches, you still had those duties,
Right.
So, I was fortunate at the time where he had the school. It was only about 5 minutes from my parents' house, so it was just like I get off of work, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my gear and get down to the school, and I was down there at least 3 times a week, sometimes 4. For about over 4.5 months, over 4 months. Yeah.
Now, when you said that you were first taking bumps at your house, you made the foam on the ground. Did you find that when you were actually being trained to take proper bumps, that you had already calloused your body by taking the bumps yourself before you went to the school, or was it still, holy shit, this hurts, taking bumps still hurts because you're not calloused?
Yeah. Well, funny thing about that is, I mean, of course, I was watching others taking bumps, and of course, taking tips on how your head should be, how your arms should be whenever you hit the mat, where your legs, your feet should be squared. Yeah. And so after, when it was my turn, I did take my first bump, and it actually felt softer than when I was taking my bumps in my backyard on my phone. So, and at the time, on when the ring was set up, there's all like that carpet padding. There's only
Mhm.
like maybe like two thin layers that was covering the plywood, and that's it.
Right.
So, but still, I thought, man, I was like, man, this feels good. I'm like, man, let me get up and do it again. So I was actually thrilled because I kind of had my question like, man, how's this going to be? I'm like, you can't think about that. You just got to do and concentrate on where you're landing. And sure enough, it was a pleasant surprise on how it felt. So
Yep. Now, did you have problems cardio wise at all? Because cardio training
man,
normally it's much different from what I'm told inside the ring than just cardio training outside of the ring.
yeah, let me tell you, um, you're going through making different maneuvers. I mean, this is basically uh I mean, you can do all the treadmill, you can do the elliptical, you can do whatever you want as far as how you're going to try to build your lungs. But when like I said, it's basically everything that you're trying to do in the gym.
Mhm.
All of that comes into play when you're in the ring and you're lifting and you're squatting and you're ducking and having to go back and forth. It all goes into play as
Right.
far as how how I mean as far as how you keep
Mhm.
your physical condition
Right.
throughout the ring. And like I said, there's no off days usually when you have to make sure that you're in tune. Now, I mean, I will say I'm not really doing as much as I used to do with cardio,
Right.
and that really does have an effect. I mean, I'll be lucky if, some of my matches last like 12 minutes, but you know, um, but otherwise, I mean, but look at me. I mean, I'm still using power to kind of
Right.
I'm still using power in my matches to get what I need to get done, and then and get the job done, or I fizzle out and I get pinned. So it's one or the other how that's going to happen. So
Right. So you go through wrestling school, and at some point, either your trainers or yourself, you decide that you're ready for your first match. And man, what a first match you had to have with a Hall of Famer, Cowboy Bob Orton. I mean, I can't, I cannot imagine being a rookie, just freshly done training, and now I'm stepping inside the ring with a legend like Cowboy Bob Orton. Where's your nerves at?
oh, well, to kind of set the scene a little bit real quick,
Yeah,
that was actually my second match ever, my first singles match
your
ever,
first. Okay,
because I had a 6-man tag to wear, and that was now that 6-man tag really helped me kind of overcome a lot because they put me through the mill after
mm,
the match just to see what I could take and see if I'm going to come back. And sure enough, I came back. Um, but yeah, promoter said, it's like, yeah, yeah. Well, of course, it was a TV taping show because it was a show, but they're going to tape TV to air it locally around here. And they're like, yeah, Ruby, you're going to be working second show. You're kicking off, and you're working Bob Orton. I'm like, okay. So I literally went to Frankie D. I'm like, this is my first singles match ever, and I'm on TV against Bob Orton. And he he basically just kind of talked me through some things to calm me down. And I mean, it was about 2 or 3 minutes. I really didn't get much in at all. Of course, me
right.
being a rookie, which is fine. Bob's a good, solid worker. You'll feel it, but he won't kill you. So, but yeah, I just never knew that I was going to be facing Bob Orton until they were writing up the the matches that day. So it just caught me by surprise on that.
Yeah, I was fortunate to meet Bob Orton in at FanFest. We been outside a few times, smoked a cigarette together, and what a great guy he is, man. Such a down to earth, chilled man. Um,
Oh yeah.
it- how was he though inside of the ring? I'm assuming he's the one that was calling the match.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
right,
yeah, obviously so. I mean, yeah, you definitely
right.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely let the veterans, the guys who've been in the business, take control. You let the guys that have been there the most and that had the most experience, they're the generals of the whole situation.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, my career would have been cut short if I said, "Hey Bob, here's what we're gonna do." I would have not lasted the entire year.
So,
So
how was it
yes.
though with calling the matches? Because I have other friends who are professional wrestlers. I have a friend of mine actually who his first match was against Triple H, and he said,
Mhm.
"Man, Triple H was brutal because he'll tell you point blank, you fuck up this move, I'm going to legit hit you." Um, so I mean, how was Bob Orton when it came to he's working with you, you're a rookie with calling this match?
Oh, well, that was really my first interaction with Bob. It and and this is really a lesson for anybody who's getting into business and you're going through your rookie year, even like your first 2 years. Um, if you're working somebody that's had a lot more experience than you, the base and basically you want to take the same mentality as if you're doing training is mouth shut, ears open, eyes wide open. You know, you just watch, listen, and it's either yes sir, no sir, whatever. And you just do what he's asked you to do. Um, and you have to be humble in this business. And it really, I could really go off on a tangent and how people who thought that they were hot stuff and had a very short career because they couldn't let their ego be checked at the door. They thought they were better and they wanted to get themselves over other than getting the entire card over or putting other people over or putting the match over or something of that nature. So I've seen it happen and it's not good, you know. I mean, it's not good if you're somebody who wants to thrive and still be in the business
Mhm.
and go other places. And you know, you got to know your etiquette when you're going to other places, especially when you're being a worker and everything else. Because if you go, with a sourpuss attitude, you're not going to get far.
Right,
Especially we're going into a locker room to a promoter or anything else of that nature, and you know, you
right.
definitely will not be invited back if if the promoter is smart. But yeah, it can nip you in the butt if you don't listen. You've got to listen in this business. I mean, and no matter where you're at, and even Herb Simmons will tell you, even his in 52 years of wrestling, because he'll see something new and you'll learn something. Because the moment you stop learning, you need to get
Mhm.
out.
Right.
That's bottom line. If you're not willing to learn or observe something and you don't learn from any type of experience, and you think your stuff's untouchable and no one else is above you, then you need to leave.
Right,
Just
right.
get out. Do everybody a favor, man.
Now, has your wrestling name for during your whole career been the same, Rough Cut Rick Ruby?
It has not. Actually, this is the whole thing of because and I just mentioned about ideas. Well, the whole thing is I wanted to use my shoot name and kind of add like a nickname to it. And I came to Franklin about it. I'm like, hey, I think it's gonna be great. I got this and this and this and all that. I'm like, and he's like, no, we're not going to do that. But we're gonna come up with something for you. But I ended up starting with an 80s rock and roll gimmick, and we're talking like a clone spawn of the Rock and Roll Express, literally. Um, and one of the sweet things that for the crew at Falls Count everywhere, at the Fan Fest is Ricky Morton, of course, came by, and Mr. GQ had it's a long time gag because I just wore a shirt that said rock and roll. Basically, what was on the tights of them, I just put on a shirt and I had tassels and everything. and Ricky Morton stopped by during our live feed, and Ricky Morton had the shirt when I had to go away for a minute, but then I came back and here's Ricky Morton talking, and he's got this shirt in hand, and I'm like, oh no. So Ricky Morton says, it's like throws it to me like, hey, put this on and talk to me. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. So I'm sitting here talking this big, this tight rock and roll shirt, talking to Ricky Morton during our live feed at the Fan Fest, and it's kind of funny. So but yeah, so it was rock and roll Rick Ruby for about the first roughly about year and a half of my career. So
was CSWA your very first promotion that you went to?
Yeah, CSWA was Central States Wrestling Alliance. That is the one that got my foot in the door. We toured a lot through Missouri. In fact, in the year of '97 alone, they put on 78 shows to where I was on 70 of them. But yeah, that was my very first promotion. And then also a couple names that have come out of there that don't really give much credit, because I guess the way that kind of how the promoter treated them later on and tried to bask too much. But Glenn Jacobs did come out from that area. Of course, as a different, his initial gimmick was Angus King, and of course he went on. He propelled himself to go throughout the Malenkos and train and so forth. And then we all know the end story there. And then of course Trevor Rhodes at the time, or now is Trevor Murdoch, who is a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, which he was kind of the meat for me, surprisingly, when he first started, and we actually battled a few times. Even going down into Arkansas, we wrestled, and I actually got a victory over him in his early, very, very early stage of his career as Trevor Rhodes. And
let me ask you a question real quick, if you don't mind, about Trevor.
Yeah, go right ahead.
And this may seem like a silly question, but you never assume anything in professional wrestling.
Right.
Trevor Murdoch absolutely looks just like Dirty Dick Murdoch, right? Is that why his last name is that where that Murdoch? Do you know that Murdoch last name came from? Was because of his likeness to Dick Murdoch?
I think so. Yeah, the Murdoch name. Yeah, and like I said, they wanted to go with Trevor Murdoch. Of course, he got Trevor Murdoch when he went into WWE at the time. And I think it just stuck with, honestly, I think it just stuck with him. And it took me a while to kind of to see it, but he started having the build and maybe even the facial expressions of maybe Dick Murdoch. And it kind of stuck, And I mean, and here's the guy who's put in work. I mean, the guy that I've seen and through his initial training, did a few matches with them. Then he eventually goes on that same year and Harley took him underneath his wing. And he just bloomed at that point. And then, in the Midwest, and when WWE came into town, Harley was the person to contact. And I know Trevor worked so hard to get in, and he had his time in WWE as tag champions with Lance Cade, and and then of course still flourishing today in the NWA.
Yeah, he's one of the people that if I ever get on this podcast, I will feel like I've reached the pinnacle, just because I always loved Trevor, just because I am such an old school guy growing up watching myself wrestling, and it was very nostalgic watching him wrestle, because he wrestled like those guys back then. Enough about Trevor. This is about you, though. The Miz Canceled Gaming says that he is super grateful to Ruby. I will stand beside this man until the end.
Yeah, and like I said, Zamiz, the Gem City Mouth. I mean, he's one of my. He's become basically my sidekick, the sidekick I can depend on for the False Count Everywhere podcast, and it was definitely a very fortunate blessing to come across him when I needed somebody. When me and GQ started that podcast out originally, but he had some other commitments that was taking him away from the show. And I thought maybe I had to stop the show, and we just found a way to to wrap him up because he was just getting into announcing, but I've heard and seen his work, and I kind of felt his energy was really great. And
Right.
so I was very fortunate to pick Zach up, and like I said, that's actually his gaming channel, which he does air Friday nights. Basically, they do a lot of we do Grand Theft Auto racing, and like I said, it's canceled gaming for a reason. It's your kids should not be listening to it. So if you got your kids, make sure they're in
Right.
bed. And
Right.
and that's even coming from me, the guy who's trying to keep it proper. And sometimes, if I get hit or whatever and I get put into a wall or thrown over, and then yeah, other words start flying out. So, it happens. It
Right.
happens.
Right.
But
Let me ask you, how do for yourself, because I'm sure every pro wrestler's answer will be different. How do you measure your success in professional wrestling? Is it by the amount of belts that you've been fortunate enough to win? Is it about the amount of great matches that you believe you've had? How have you measured your success?
that's a very good question. Um, Belts are belts. They're accolades. I mean, they're going to be something that's on my resume. But my success, to me personally, is how I leave what impression I leave on the promotion I'm in, promotion I leave with, impression what I leave with the fans. Do they like seeing me? If I'm a heel, do I really get underneath their skin and they just want to see me get torn apart and they can't wait until the next time I get torn apart? Or do they like me with when I come in as a baby and getting behind the crowds and I interact with them? So my success basically to me is how I'm getting the company over along with me going along the side of it because I'm here to make the product look good. And like I said, I'm here. I mean, when I go into a show, it's a team effort, and everybody should have that, as a team effort because really, I mean, we're all in this together when we're in a wrestling show. So if you can't really, some people like to put themselves over, but you got to check that once again, you got to check that ego.
Mhm.
You got to be in. Um, but I think it's just, I think, how I measure success is how I'm getting over, and if the promoter does like my work, if I'm making them money, if I'm getting them attention, if I'm getting them for people to come back, to me that's success. I mean, everything else is, it's nice to have, and
Right.
you know, but I think that's how I kind of measure success is making sure that everybody else is even more successful than as a whole.
Right. As I said at the beginning, you have wrestled for I'll get many promotions. Again, CSWA, MVVWA, or that's MVWA,
Yeah,
SSWA, ICPW, MPW, SICW, ACW, all these promotions. And I didn't even get through all of the ones that that I have a list of, right? Out of all
right, of
these
course.
promotions that you have wrestled for, is there one over the other that you believe that you had more success in?
Um, well, I mean, as far as right now, I mean, all of those have been fun in the past where I've had. I mean, there's some promotions back there. There's one on your list, which is OSCW, which is Old
Hmm.
School Championship Wrestling. That was out of Evansville, Indiana. That was a project that I took on while I'm here in St. Louis, and I worked with somebody else that was in Evansville. They wanted to get a promotion up and going, and I was getting kind of stagnant for where I was. Phil wasn't going anywhere, and just me and Frank weren't really on the greatest of terms at that point. So I decided to venture in and help with promoting and booking. So I actually got promoting and booking experience by pulling guys from other states that wanted to come in and do the show, and that lasted about a year and a half between like either 8 or 9 shows. Um, Obviously, I mean, it was fun to do. Was it a success? Yeah. I mean, just obviously it only lasted so long, but when you start hemorrhaging money, then you got to pull the plug
Right. Right.
before you lose it totally.
Right.
And but as far as the promotion that there are some promotions right now. Like right now, I really enjoy my time with American Championship Wrestling because I do consider that my home promotion right now. There's a lot of new guys that are coming in that want to learn the business, and with the Searcher, who is the promoter and also trainer, and then of course we have there's another Justin Main Event. The champion is also the head trainer down there. We got guys going down to the dojo usually about every Sunday to learn basics, learning something new, learning new series, whatever the case. It depends on how far along they are, and they of course also maybe cutting some promotional material down there as well. So they make use of their Sunday afternoons, and for me, it's a joy for me to be down there because I'm wanting to pass along whatever. I mean, because they're coming to me as far as maybe some advice or what they could do, or maybe working with some of the new guys to help get them over, and that's which to me is fun because trying to see somebody new, because obviously I can't be in this forever. You want to see the new guys prosper and gain more success and just gain more experience with being inside the ring. So I mean, right now ACW, my home promotion is very fun, and like I said, and of course SICW, of course, they put on spectacular cards, and I fill in when I can, work when I can there. I haven't really done much down there this year because honestly, our booking schedule between ACW and even probably some other outside stints I've had, we've not really had much to work with this year. I'm hoping that will change, but um, yeah, but right now, I mean, I'm doing most of my work with ACW, and I'm just enjoying the new blood that's coming in, and they're just killing it, and the fans are coming in, they're enjoying it, and that's and we're just continuing to have fun and hopefully be even more successful as the year goes on.
Yeah. So you have held multiple singles belts. You've also held multiple tag team belts. Uh, have you had multiple partners, or has it been mainly just one guy you've been a partner with throughout your career?
Yeah, so there's one individual that I've had the most. I've had maybe about two or three, or no, about four of those tag team title championships with. And he's no longer in the business. In fact, I have not heard from him in years because he kind of dipped out. His head wasn't in the right place for the business and had too much going on. But yeah, I was involved with a team called Brutality Incorporated, and it was me and a guy named Dangerous Derek Davis. Um, we were tag team champions actually in CSWA, in MPW and RCW. So we were champs twice in RCW, once in CSWA, and then once in MPW. So, but I've had a lot. Yeah, I have multiple partners because usually I can work a tag pretty basic. To me, it seems like tag team's basic work for me. As far as whatever partner that wants to the pair with me, we just found a way to get out there and get the crowd over, and yeah, so yeah, I did have multiple partners. Yeah, some that are worth mentioning, some are not worth mentioning for other outside reasons. But yeah, it's I've had a lot of tag team championships. I think I've had like 10 tag team championships altogether. And in
Mhm.
fact, this coming Saturday, July 19th is when ACW is having their next show in DeSoto, Missouri. Myself and Big Bubba Walsh have been doing some tag team matches as of late, and we have now formed a tag team name called the Party Bus because with the Lifetime Express, and then Big Bubba Walsh likes to bring the party along with him. So we kind of clashed that together, and we're now known as the Party Bus. And we're going to be having a match down in DeSoto in about just under 2 weeks, and that should be a lot of fun.
Right. I want to talk to you about championships for a second.
Yeah.
I have listened to professional wrestlers like Bret Hart or superstar Billy Graham talk about, when they had the belts, that it was more than just this prop, if you will, and when they had to lose the belts, they took it hard. Bret Hart said that, when you get the belt, this is the company saying, hey, we got faith in you to be the face of the company. You're the one that's putting the ass in seats. When you drop that belt, some have said that they felt like the company didn't have that faith in them anymore, and that's why they were dropping the belts. Is that how you felt when you had the belts and then you dropped the belt? Or was it just something like, it's cool having a belt, but I'm more than just that championship?
Well, yeah. Well, like I said, to me, I think the person actually makes the belt. The belt can't make the person. You got to build yourself up, absolutely, 100%. When it comes to having a title, if there happens to be a title change, either it's maybe another direction the promoter wants to go or the promotion wants to go, to see how maybe the storylines go. I mean, where you're talking major companies, though, I mean, they can't. If you drop a title, you can't take it personally. You just can't, for any reason whatsoever. I mean, so despite what anybody would say, so I really think, though, it's just all not just necessarily marketing phase, but I mean, because that's more of mainstream main. At least if we're talking WWE, maybe AEW's got something different in line. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, there's a certain person that's got like 6 titles, and I'm not even going to mention their name. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. But I think it's a whole ploy, maybe just with marketing and how storylines and everything else go.
Right.
Maybe just trying something different, or maybe it's just come their time and they're just paying their dues. So I mean, there could be several reasons behind it, but you really can't get offended about losing it. I mean, if you think it sucks, I mean, so what? I mean, it's like, you can't be gracious for the time that you were there, that you're in that spotlight and you had your opportunity. It's like basically you're running a marathon, you're doing like this relay marathon, and you got passed the torch. You got to take your run as best, you got to make your run as best as you can before you have to pass that torch off.
Right.
It happens. It's going to happen. So, I mean, if you take it personally, I mean, that's a little bit more of a sour grapes on you, because you got to think about what the promotion wants other than what you want. Once again, it's all for one, not all for one. All for one, not one for all, know?
Right.
Now, so yeah.
So I have to, has there ever been a time in your career that you're like, man, I need to do something as a professional wrestler to reinvent myself? And if so, how do guys that look like fakely like me and or we're bald-headed guys. I mean, there's not much we could do with our appearance. So how do you reinvent yourself in the sports if that's something that you felt like you've ever had to do?
Well, I mean, I was put in situations too where, when I switched over from rock and roll to rough cut, I mean, I did that. That was a very sly move and slight, because I had some ideas conjured and talked with some other guys in the back, and I actually pulled that live during the show,
Wow!
without the promoter knowing, and
how did that go?
Well, he seemed to take it in stride. I mean, he had no choice other than to that, and I mean, it just stuck ever since. But if he didn't think that I was not capable of doing anything, I would not won the championship like 2 months later.
Right.
you know. So
Right.
obviously he saw something that I put out of this rock and roll persona and everything else, because I was more than just arrogant, flamboyant, or whatever, arrogant, flamboyant, or whatever it was. Um, but as far as like reinventing yourself, it is tough at some points to become original, and even at even with this whole party bus situation here, um, Big Bubba Walsh comes out with a cowboy hat, and
Hmm.
me and Searcher were talking. I'm like, is there a way that maybe you guys can just have like a prop and you come out with that just kind of meshes the both of you together? I'm like, I got the perfect idea. And so when the party bus comes out, not only do I have my neon glasses on, but I have a neon green cowboy hat that I come out to the ring with. So I'm meshing, and my wife has never seen it. She's seen the hat one day, and she was like, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, "That's my new entrance. That's my new entrance gear for ACW." I'm like, "Why the hell are you wearing this?" I'm like, "You just have to be there, hon. Just don't worry about it." It's so. I mean, people think it's cool. I mean, especially when the lights are turned off. I mean, my eyes are glowed up and my hat's glowed up, and we're just having a party. So it's I guess that's partial to, when you're trying to mesh like different gimmicks together. I guess that's a slight variation of a reinvention. But if you feel something's not getting over, you know you have to find out what's not getting over. Is it the way that your gimmick is? I mean, do people give it? I mean, do they really care about what you're doing,
Hmm.
or what you state? um and as far as what your purpose is behind the gimmick. So if there's like no purpose behind the gimmick, then you need to find something else. You need to find me there's ways to do that. And if you need to find a way of maybe reinventing yourself, if you got to go back and maybe look at how some of the old school guys are getting over, or or some of the gimmicks that they use, not heavy gimmicks, but something like maybe whatever the NWA was doing, or a World Class is doing, or something of that nature. It's all about attitude and maybe background, kind of knowing what background, where you're from, um maybe a name change, you never know. um but you just have to find out. You probably just have to sit, and you have to step yourself aside, sit down, and do your own research to see who was really getting over, and what can you do, maybe a variation of it, but not exactly, but don't copy it, for God's sakes.
Right. Right.
um if you could find a variation of something that you liked and it's getting over, then you've done something good, you know so if people don't care what you're doing in the ring, then you definitely have to find something to make a change and make something else happen.
Right. Right. Who is Rough Cut Ricky Ruby, and how closely is Rough Cut Ricky Ruby a representation of you?
Right. Well, Rough Cut Rick Ruby grew up on the west side of Detroit, Michigan, where that's where my fighting style came from. Because I was rough, I had to take, basically getting attacks from every angle possible, and be ready and have and just be ready and be on my senses to turn within and just be ready for anything that comes at you. And you just have to battle your way through. That's why I have a buzzsaw, because I'm always circling around. I'm trying to just throw something just make a turn and make sure something hits before something hits me. Um, and of course, Detroit has been known for not the nicest of neighborhoods. I'm sure probably St. Louis is probably a close second, but or vice versa, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, but that's basically where Rough Cut Rick Ruby is. It's a guy who is tired of taking hits from out of nowhere for no reason, and you have to find a way to find back. So, um, and of course, I will say that I was kind of more of an Austinish like feel
Mhm.
whenever I brought up, I was rash. I mean, I had a lot of things going on at the time, and sometimes your your feelings from your personal life can get into the ring, but you can't make it personal, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
You got to channel that energy of aggression to what you can put into the match.
Right.
And so that's basically what Rick Ruby is. And that kind of, I guess, that kind of also answers my kind of your second question
Right.
is,
Right.
that's kind of basically what I am, because we're just we're trying to do the best we can to provide, and be the best that we can be. And sometimes there's others that will try to haunt and maybe try to get you down, but you
Yeah.
got to find a way to persevere, because us wrestlers that have been around for a while and have endured battles, we're definitely built different, and we just
Right.
don't quit. We don't quit. We get knocked down, but we always get back up, because if we stay down, then it's over. A lot of your life is over. You got to find a way to overcome anything that is either negative or something that will get you down. And you may be down for a while, but you can't stay down. But
Right.
eventually, you will be getting back up. So,
Absolutely. Mr. Herb says, "Hello, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Herb, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let's go to something else that you're doing, which is your Falls Count Anywhere podcast. At what point did you decide that, you know what, I want to add a podcast to my already busy but successful wrestling career that I've had? Which, by the way, I have to tell you, man, that I've had Magnum TA, Baby Doll on here. I mean, I've had some legends on here, and thus far in my short time of doing podcasts, um, you're the one that has made me a little nervous coming on, just because you are someone that does you have a podcast, a very good podcast at that. So in that way, I kind of look at you as a peer, in the podcast world. And it's one of those things that, man, I don't want to mess up in front of Rick,
no,
type of a thing. So it has been. I was so honored when you said that you would come on my little podcast. I really was.
of
Back to that
course.
question though, again, you had very successful wrestling career. When did you decide that you wanted to throw in a podcast into the mix?
Yeah. Real quick on those two names, Magnum T and Baby Doll. Gosh, what great names to
Yes.
watch. When I grew up on watching the Superstation, man, I'll tell you what, those are two of the attractions that really got me. Magnum TA, and it's unfortunate how his
Yes.
career ended. But man, I was a big Magnum TA fan too.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I have this conversation with friends all the time, and I always say, it will always be a what if, but you have to ask yourself, would WWE back then, would Hulk Hogan have been as big if we would have still had Magnum TA in professional wrestling? Because he was on track, man, to be this massive guy. He really was. So I completely agree with what you're saying
oh
with
yeah,
that.
I mean, he was on a roll.
Yep.
And he was going there. In fact, but unfortunately, circumstances that came to be that ended his in ring career, and,
Yep.
that's kind of sad. But at least he's still around today, so
Yep.
God
Yep.
bless him on that.
Yep.
But no, as far as answer
Yeah.
your question, um, a lot of people don't know that I've actually started my broadcasting career back right before I got into wrestling career.
Oh
And what I mean
wow.
by that, I've actually was a DJ, a mobile DJ, doing for like weddings, parties, bar mitzvahs, school dances, whatever. And I was actually trained to do that first before, and that was about a year before I got in. So I've got with a lot of broadcasting experience, and before that, I actually did a project through Blog Talk Radio, and we actually had the Lime Time Radio Network, where we had a number of shows that were on. We actually did one called the Slam Zone Wrestle Recap, where we tried to do like it was basically radio. We didn't have any cameras or anything of that nature, but the quality issues. But it kind of set me off with Blog Talk Radio, and even to the day, um, it's still audio only, but it's like AM radio quality, and it sucks, but
Yeah.
majorly. So I mean, but yeah, unfortunately, the fortunate part and yet unfortunate part is this was kind of a COVID experiment.
Mm,
We just hit the COVID era with the pandemic, and I'm like, I just can't find a way to just like wrestling die. There's nobody doing shows around here, so I figured what better time to get guys that were in the scene, and I start pulling them in. It's like, hey, let's do feature guest interviews, and from every place on. And I kind of was thinking of a name, and that's where we came upon Falls Count Everywhere, not just anywhere, but everywhere,
everywhere.
because everywhere, it's there's success everywhere you go,
Right.
no matter which region. And I think I've had just about interviews from like individual guys from just about every region. I had to kind of get my map out later, but yeah, it was just kind of something I wanted to get started, and eventually just kind of took off. We just kept doing it, and then we got other guys that were behind us, like Zimiz, who was helping me out, and eventually, and Zimiz definitely doesn't want this brand to go anywhere anytime soon. So anywhere it's more up than out.
Right.
So yeah, and that's how we got started with that. And we just hit episode 200 at the end of June. So we're 200 episodes in, to official episodes in. We kind of done some shows that we didn't mark as episodes, if that makes sense. But
Hmm.
like I said, we've been around since April of 2020, and so we've been here for more than 5 years. And like I said, we don't plan on going away anytime soon. And we just try to pick the best of the best throughout the weeks, and then have our featured guests. And sometimes the featured guests are definitely one of a kind that we get in, and it's always a pleasure to have them. And so yeah,
Right. Right.
so that's how at least this project is going, and how that got started.
So, how much longer do you believe you have left to be competing inside of the ring?
Mm, that's very, you know what, I tell these guys, I'm like, what, it's on one hand, but I can't tell you a number.
Right.
It just all depends on how my health is. Would I like to do this as long as I possibly can? Yes, I would. But the people are like, well, Gypsy Joe was 70, Terry Funk was 70. Yeah, thanks, Herb. Yeah, forever. Um, well, Herb, I'm sure would like to find a way to retire, but it's like they keep dragging him in. But yeah, it really depends on how my health is and how I really treat myself. And I know I have to make improvements with that if I definitely want to um, keep longevity in the ring. There's people in their mid 50s, like I said, Gary Jackson's still, like, I think he's like maybe early 60s, about maybe 60 or 61, if I had to guess. Um, but yeah, he's been around for a long time, and yeah, he still wrestles. So it's like I'm seeing these guys wrestle. I'm like, man, I would like to just kind of rest for a while, but what keeps two things to keep holding me back is seeing these guys that go longer than what I think about walking away, and then two, once I walk away, is there any way of going back? And sometimes
Right.
something tells me there's probably no way of going back if I decide to walk away. And I think it's really all in retrospect too, and to the respect to the guys that are coming up, that if I do decide to walk away, whenever that time is, um, to not pull a repeated Terry Funk or 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 Ric Flair talking about I think I got one more match as he's 75 barely breathing.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
it's whatever it is, you know. Um, but I like to stay for as long as I can. I will tell you that I'm not getting sick of it, but
Right.
at the same time, I don't want to kill myself from it.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
you know,
One last question. Is there anything that you have not achieved yet within your professional wrestling career that you would still like to be able to achieve?
wow. Um, that is very, very kind of open. Um, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but I mean, either getting some involvement into like a major brand, even if it's like NWA or OVW, getting some involvement with there. Um, that would be kind of cool somehow to get through. I know there's guys that like Brandon Beretta that are in there, Chris Exodus up
Mhm.
there. These guys that are just continuing to fight hard. And I mean, these guys are workhorses and they're in OVW on a regular basis. I at least would like to at least work one of those shows. I would like to work an NWA show. Um, and then because I'm not going to stretch for WWE because we know that's never going to happen. And with all due respect, no AEW. So um so I think probably if I can get a match from one of those, I mean, if I hit it, great. If I don't hit it, I'm not going to be disappointed either. But I would like to have something like that again. And then one other small thing, I'd
Yeah.
like to have one more steel cage match somehow, somewhere before it's all said and done.
Is there, I know I said that was my last question, but is there anyone in professional wrestling, regardless if they're still in the indie scene or with one of the big companies, that you would like to be inside of the ring, possibly in the cage match with?
Well, um, it's been long overdue, I would think. And if Herb's watching and listening, I don't know how this is going to how it can pan out, but I think I like to have at least one more run with the Khan. I know people say
Wow.
I'm crazy. I would like to have a Khan in the steel cage. I
Wow,
would.
that's crazy.
I would. And people will know that I can handle somebody like Attila Khan in the cage. I'm
Right,
pretty sure, you know, I'm confident of that. Yeah, is the guy nuts? Of course. But am I confident? You have to be confident to get in this
right,
business.
right.
The butterflies can stir, but if they see you nervous, then you're shot. Then you're pretty much dead before you get in the ring.
Yep, yep,
So,
yep.
but yeah, I mean, but
Herb,
if
let's
I
make
if I
this
had my
happen.
druthers, that's what I would do.
Yeah, well, Mr. Herb, you're listening, so let's make this happen. Rough cut, Rick Ruby, thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to plug with both professional wrestling and as well with the podcast?
Yeah. So if you want to find me anywhere on social media, I'm at Lime Time STL. That's STL, the abbreviation for St. Louis. So Lime Time STL is pretty much anywhere with Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, which I barely get on. But that's where you can find me anywhere. But Falls Count Everywhere, that's where you can find me. Uh, you can just False Count Everywhere on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, on X. Well, on X is at FCE Podcast, but usually we got links to all of our stuff on our Facebook page at Falls Count Everywhere, and we do our shows live every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central. We will be returning for episode 201 this coming Sunday. What we're going to have, I don't know, but I know there's big things coming up. You know, you got All in Texas Saturday. They got Evolution. You also got Saturday night's main event on Saturday. There's a big weekend. Once again, there's another big weekend of wrestling. And of course, SICW is going to be wrestling again. I mean, another big weekend of wrestling when it comes
It
to
is.
me. So,
It is absolutely. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure have you on. Everybody, check out the podcast for sure. Falls Count everywhere. It's one of my favorite podcasts. Also, if you hear of Rough Cut Rick Ruby being in your area, get a ticket. Go watch the show. You will not be disappointed. We will be back tomorrow to be doing. We will be doing the recap of Monday Night Raw. Until then, everyone, thank you all. Please subscribe, and you guys have a good rest of your week.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.